Billionaire Playboy thought he could cheat forever, until she fought back. Vincent Kane sits at the defendant's table, his $5,000 suit wrinkled, his usual confidence replaced by a tight jaw and restless hands. The courtroom is crowded with reporters, cameras, and spectators, all focused on the moment. Across the aisle, Catalina Rodriguez stands in a sharp navy blazer, her dark hair pulled back, her voice calm but commanding as she addresses the room. She lists names, dates, and events with precision, revealing how Vincent's decade-long pattern of betrayal impacted careers, businesses, and personal lives across the country. Each detail chips away at the empire he built with charm, ambition, and relentless drive. Investors, colleagues, and the public are watching as the weight of his actions becomes impossible to ignore. For 10 years, Vincent Kane believed his billions made him untouchable. He was wrong, Catalina says, her eyes never leaving his. Vincent shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his empire's foundation cracking under the scrutiny of evidence and testimony. The courtroom waits, the tension between past deceit and present accountability filling every corner. How did a tech mogul worth $3.2 billion end up facing financial ruin and federal charges? Viewers, tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe for tomorrow's story you won't want to miss, and support us in bringing more powerful stories like this one. Let's begin. Vincent Kane was born in Palo Alto, California, the son of a Korean mother and an Irish father. From an early age, he displayed an aptitude for technology that surpassed his peers. While other teenagers spent evenings at the mall or playing video games, Vincent was writing code in his bedroom, building small applications that hinted at a future far larger than the suburban streets he grew up on. His mother, a software engineer who had immigrated from Seoul, worked tirelessly for early tech startups, while his father managed a modest accounting firm. Together, they sacrificed comfort to ensure Vincent had access to opportunities they never could have imagined. By 16, Vincent had already developed software that caught the attention of investors. By 22, he had founded Kane Tech Solutions, a company that would eventually make him a billionaire. Its headquarters, occupying an entire block in San Francisco's Soma district, represented more than a business. It symbolized the connections he built across the globe. Vincent saw himself as a bridge between innovative technology and elite capital, a man capable of creating systems that touched millions of lives. Success came quickly, and with it, a lifestyle of privilege. Private jets, luxury cars, and exclusive properties became standard. The Beverly Hills mansion on Mulholland Drive offered sweeping views of the city below, its infinity pool a constant reminder of his achievements. Yet alongside his professional ascent, a different pattern was emerging, a pattern that would define his personal life. Vincent's romantic relationships followed a precise formula. He cultivated charm like a skill, learning early how to make each woman feel singularly chosen. Models, socialites, entrepreneurs, and heiresses were drawn to him for his intelligence, wealth, and charisma. He showered them with lavish gifts, Tiffany jewelry, first-class flights to Aspen, private weekends in Martha's Vineyard. Initially, it appeared that his attention was sincere, a reflection of affection. In truth, it was calculated. Each gesture was designed to enthrall and disarm, creating loyalty while he simultaneously plotted the eventual exit. Once trust was established, Vincent's pattern emerged. Relationships, no matter how promising, were finite. Boredom would set in, and he would find someone new, more exciting, or more strategically valuable. When breakups occurred, they were conducted with precision. Expensive parting gifts were handed over, non-disclosure agreements ensured silence, and his public reputation remained untarnished. To the outside world, Vincent Kane was a devoted boyfriend or generous companion. To those who experienced the other side, he was a man who left broken hearts and disrupted lives in his wake. His social calendar reflected the breadth of his pursuits. Charity galas in New York, art auctions in Napa Valley, horse races in Louisville, film festivals in Park City. Vincent's life moved from city to city, each location serving as a backdrop for both professional gain and personal conquest. His relationships were as mobile as he was, each tied to an event, an opportunity, or an image that required him to maintain appearances of success and desirability. Within the walls of his estates, the pattern was repeated with mechanical consistency. The Mulholland Drive mansion, with its marble floors and infinity pool, became a revolving door of visitors and lovers. Tearful confrontations were a regular occurrence, yet Vincent had perfected the delivery. Gentle dismissals paired with financial compensation, ensuring that women left without anger disrupting his reputation. Stories of heartbreak were never shared publicly, hidden behind a carefully constructed public persona that broadcasted generosity, sophistication, and control. The system extended beyond relationships. Non-disclosure agreements were used not only to protect him legally, but to maintain the illusion of infallibility. Women who attempted to speak publicly were met with reminders of the contractual obligations they had signed. Few had the leverage, connections, or courage to resist. Vincent's method ensured that his personal life remained a private playground, free from accountability, at least temporarily. As Cainetech expanded, Vincent applied the same philosophy to business. He cultivated relationships with partners, investors, and innovators, all while maintaining a personal network designed to support his growth. Deals were negotiated, contracts signed, and acquisitions made with ruthless efficiency. In many ways, Vincent's charm, attention to detail, and intelligence created a professional empire as impressive as his personal image. Yet the ethical compromises in his personal relationships foreshadowed cracks that would later appear in his corporate dealings. The contrast between Vincent's public image and private conduct was stark. To the outside observer, he was a tech visionary, a philanthropist, and a man who understood both money and people. In reality, his success relied on manipulation, charm, and a careful balancing act between attention and deception. Romantic partners were never informed of his simultaneous relationships. Business contacts were shielded from his more predatory strategies. Each misstep was carefully hidden, each scandal preemptively controlled through legal and social influence. His network of connections became an ecosystem that reinforced his lifestyle. From San Francisco to Los Angeles, New York to Aspen, Vincent cultivated friends and allies who benefited from his generosity and influence. Invitations to exclusive parties, private jets, and high-profile events were distributed in exchange for loyalty. Those who questioned him were often isolated, their reputations quietly diminished while others continued to thrive within his orbit. Yet despite the appearance of perfection, the human element, emotion, trust, and relationships, was always the most vulnerable. Vincent's inability to sustain genuine personal connections created tension in ways he did not anticipate. The series of betrayals, carefully executed though they were, accumulated over time. Stories began to circulate, subtle warnings whispered in social circles, hints that the charismatic billionaire was not entirely reliable in matters of the heart. By the time he reached the height of his wealth, Vincent Cain was known both for his brilliance and for his pattern of personal transgressions. The empire he built on innovation and connections had a fragile underside, a series of broken relationships and silenced voices, each carrying the potential to disrupt his carefully curated world. His reputation remained intact publicly, yet the foundations of trust, both in business and in life, were increasingly unstable. In this environment of luxury and influence, Vincent believed his charm and wealth would always shield him. Every city he visited, every gala attended, every relationship initiated was another opportunity to reinforce his dominance. Yet the very pattern that had served him so well, the relentless pursuit of admiration and control, paired with a lack of accountability, was the pattern that would eventually bring him to a confrontation he could no longer evade. By the mid-2010s, Cainetech was a recognized global brand. Vincent Cain, the billionaire playboy, moved through the elite social spheres with a confidence born of power and experience. Still, every gift, every gesture, every calculated act of affection carried a shadow of impermanence. The stage was set for a challenge unlike any he had encountered, a challenge that would not respond to charm, gifts, or coercion, and that would test the very foundations of his empire. Catalina Rodriguez grew up in East Los Angeles, in a neighborhood defined more by resilience than wealth. Her grandmother worked long hours cleaning offices in the city's financial district, instilling in Catalina a work ethic and sense of ambition that would shape her future. From a young age, she dreamed not of maintaining buildings, but of owning and transforming them. Her childhood was a blend of modest comforts and a relentless drive to rise above circumstance. She excelled academically, earning scholarships that carried her first to UC Berkeley and then to Stanford, where she studied engineering and business. By the time she graduated, Catalina was determined to create a company that could compete on the national stage, eventually founding Verde Innovations, a firm dedicated to sustainable technology and renewable energy solutions. Their paths first crossed at a venture capital conference in Austin, Texas. Vincent Kane, confident in his reputation and charm, approached her at a rooftop networking event overlooking the Colorado River. He offered to invest in her company, speaking in his usual persuasive tone, extolling the benefits of partnership while subtly highlighting his wealth and influence. Catalina listened, her expression controlled and skeptical. She had encountered charismatic men before, but Vincent's reputation for fleeting relationships and broken promises had reached her ears long before that afternoon. "I've done my research, Mr. Kane," she said calmly, meeting his gaze. "Your investment portfolio may be impressive, but your personal history suggests you don't follow through. I work with partners I can trust." Vincent, taken aback by the directness, realized this was not like any previous encounter. Catalina did not respond with awe or flattery. She acknowledged him politely but set clear boundaries, and he found that unfamiliar. Rejection, subtle yet firm, ignited a desire he had rarely experienced. He wanted to win her, not simply charm her. What followed was a pursuit unlike any he had attempted. Vincent began appearing at events where Catalina would be present, each visit carefully planned, but presented as coincidence. When she spoke at a clean energy summit in Denver, he was there in the audience, quietly listening, taking notes on her questions and the reactions of other attendees. He sent messages and emails that were professional in tone, referencing insights she had shared publicly rather than complimenting her appearance. In Chicago, at a partnership meeting along the lakefront, Vincent appeared at the same cafe where Catalina had stepped out for a brief walk. She suspected he had been tracking her schedule, yet she said nothing, observing his behavior with measured caution. He asked questions about her company's recent solar panel developments, genuinely attentive, and for the first time in years, he realized that his charm and money alone would not guarantee interest. Boston offered another opportunity. At Verde Innovations' product launch, Vincent attended not as an investor trying to impress, but as a curious participant, engaging in detailed discussions about technical specifications and market strategies. Catalina began to notice that he was listening, learning, and treating her as a professional equal. The process was gradual. His previous tactics of lavish gifts and high-profile gestures had no place here. Instead, respect, patience, and attentiveness began to form a fragile bridge between them. Over months, shared experiences became the foundation of their interactions. Vincent invited her to observe a demonstration of new sustainable energy equipment, offering insights and analysis rather than accolades. He accompanied her to panel discussions, occasionally introducing her to contacts who could advance her company's mission, but without overstepping boundaries. Catalina, in turn, started to recognize that his interest in her work was more than performative. While she remained cautious, she began to appreciate the subtle intelligence behind his actions. Their interactions often included travel, but not in the ostentatious style he had favored with previous companions. They visited Oregon to review a renewable energy project, walking the grounds and discussing efficiency improvements. In Santa Fe, they explored art galleries, discussing the interplay between creativity and technology. In each setting, Vincent's focus was on understanding her priorities, listening to her concerns, and showing a commitment to her vision rather than to superficial displays of wealth. Catalina's guarded demeanor did not vanish overnight. She remained vigilant, aware of the pattern that had destroyed trust for so many women before her. Yet over time, the combination of his attentiveness and consistency allowed for small openings. He remembered details from conversations months prior, referenced technical points she had raised, and recognized milestones in her company's development. For the first time, his persistence was framed by credibility, not charm alone. While Vincent learned to navigate this new approach, he also discovered a side of himself that had rarely been exercised. He experienced vulnerability, uncertainty, and the necessity of patience. The usual methods of influence, extravagance, speed, or coercion, proved ineffective. He was confronted with the reality that respect and genuine engagement were essential, and that they could not be substituted with gifts, fame, or notoriety. By the end of the first year of their interaction, a fragile bond had formed, built on mutual understanding, professional respect, and shared experiences rather than the transactional patterns Vincent had relied on for so long. Catalina remained cautious, testing his consistency, but she had also begun to recognize potential for change. Their relationship was evolving in a way that required patience, discipline, and authenticity from him, a challenge he had never faced before. Vincent's cross-country pursuit, from Austin to Denver, Chicago to Boston, and other cities along the way, was no longer about immediate conquest. Each meeting was a test of strategy, but also a reflection of his growing capacity to listen and engage meaningfully. Catalina's influence was subtle yet profound. She demanded accountability in a realm where he had rarely been held accountable. The dynamic forced him to confront the patterns that had previously gone unchecked. By the time their interactions reached the 6-month mark, Vincent had transformed his approach completely. The chase had become less about winning and more about understanding, participating in her world rather than imposing his own. Catalina, for her part, maintained boundaries while evaluating the sincerity of his interest. Their story, unlike his previous relationships, was no longer a series of calculated gestures. It was a process of negotiation, mutual learning, and cautious trust. This period set the stage for the more public evolution of their connection. The professional respect Vincent had cultivated began to merge with personal interaction, allowing both to see dimensions of each other that were previously inaccessible. Catalina remained the architect of the boundaries, ensuring that his actions were consistent and measured. Vincent, for the first time, recognized that genuine engagement required effort, patience, and adherence to principles beyond charm or wealth. The relationship between Vincent Cain and Catalina Rodriguez became public during a gala for environmental innovation held at San Francisco's Palace of Fine Arts. Photographers captured them dancing beneath the rotunda, the water of the surrounding lagoon reflecting the elegant Corinthian columns. Catalina wore an emerald dress that highlighted her heritage, while Vincent appeared attentive, genuinely engaged, and entirely transformed from the notorious playboy the media had portrayed. The event drew coverage from major outlets, with headlines suggesting that Catalina might be the woman who finally changed him. In the weeks that followed, media attention intensified. Technology magazines and lifestyle publications reported on their appearances at conferences, business meetings, and social events. Social media buzzed with images of the couple walking through Central Park, dining in Charleston's French Quarter, and attending art shows in Miami's Wynwood district. Vincent's apparent change in demeanor became a talking point among journalists and industry insiders alike. He spoke earnestly about sustainability, support for female entrepreneurs, and the responsibility of wealth, presenting himself as a partner who had shifted priorities from indulgence to meaningful connection. Life in Malibu reinforced this illusion. The couple moved into Vincent's oceanfront mansion, a modern structure perched above the Pacific, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of dolphins playing in the surf. He invited Catalina into the family circle, introducing her to his parents who had retired to Carmel by the Sea. His mother expressed relief and approval, pleased that her son had chosen a partner who seemed to share the family's values of hard work, integrity, and loyalty. Within the walls of the Malibu home, daily life reflected a careful balance of romance and routine. Weekends included long walks on white sand beaches, discussions about Verde Innovations projects, and quiet dinners overlooking the ocean. Vincent planned private trips to California wine regions and cultural excursions, demonstrating an interest in experiences rather than extravagant gifts. Catalina, cautious by nature, appreciated the consideration and attentiveness, yet remained aware of the patterns she had observed in his past behavior. Publicly, the couple appeared flawless. They attended conferences together, often speaking about the intersection of technology and sustainability. In press interviews, Vincent highlighted Catalina's achievements, framing her not as a companion, but as a respected equal. The narrative of the reformed playboy began to take hold, shaping public perception. Friends, investors, and colleagues saw a man capable of personal growth, someone willing to invest in a meaningful partnership rather than fleeting indulgence. Despite these appearances, the relationship carried an undercurrent of vigilance. Catalina remained observant, evaluating consistency in his words and actions. She noted the difference between his treatment of her and his treatment of the world prior to their connection. Each gesture, each trip, and each public appearance was measured, yet designed to reinforce trust. Vincent, for his part, was adjusting to a new form of engagement. For the first time, charm and wealth alone were insufficient. He needed to sustain credibility, patience, and respect over time. The first year together reinforced the belief of those around them that Vincent had changed. Invitations to elite gatherings, including charity galas and art openings, showcased the couple's cohesion. Investors expressed optimism that Kainteca's leadership had matured. Industry colleagues, once wary of his personal conduct, now spoke of him in terms that emphasized professionalism and commitment. Catalina's presence seemed to stabilize him in ways that previous relationships had never achieved. Yet the fairy tale, carefully maintained for public perception, masked subtle truths. Vincent's pattern of control and charm had not disappeared entirely. It had been redirected toward creating the appearance of change. Catalina, aware of his history, monitored interactions closely, ensuring that any discrepancies between words and actions were noted. While the public and media consumed the story of the reformed billionaire, she recognized that the next challenge could emerge at any moment. During social events, Vincent demonstrated attentiveness that few women had previously inspired. He listened actively, asked thoughtful questions, and appeared invested in long-term outcomes rather than short-term gratification. The difference in his behavior was noticeable even to those who had worked with him for years. Catalina's influence was quiet but effective, shaping interactions without overt confrontation. This allowed the relationship to develop with a sense of credibility and trust, even as she remained cautious. By the end of the first year, the combination of media coverage, personal engagement, and public appearances created an image of stability and genuine transformation. To onlookers, Vincent Cain was no longer the playboy whose personal choices had once sparked gossip and speculation. He was a man reformed through experience and connection, seemingly capable of sustaining a meaningful relationship. For Catalina, the year was a period of both observation and assessment. While outward appearances suggested a successful partnership, she remained vigilant, aware that patterns can repeat when opportunity presents itself. The careful balance of trust, professional respect, and shared experiences had created a strong foundation, yet the underlying knowledge of his past behavior remained a quiet reminder that appearances could be deceiving. The public story of Vincent Cain and Catalina Rodriguez, the glamorous couple appearing at high-profile events, collaborating on sustainability initiatives, and demonstrating shared commitment, was compelling. Friends, family, investors, and journalists were all convinced by the narrative of personal growth and transformation. Vincent, for the first time, had experienced a year in which charm alone could not dictate outcomes. He was learning to navigate a partnership that required consistency, respect, and authenticity. This period established the context for the next stage of the story. The illusion of love, reinforced by social appearances and public perception, had convinced nearly everyone around them of Vincent's reformation. Yet the groundwork was being laid for a revelation that would challenge the stability of both personal and professional lives. Catalina's vigilance and discernment ensured that when that moment arrived, she would be prepared to confront it with evidence, strategy, and clarity. Vincent Kane's apparent transformation was tested during a business trip to Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show. Catalina had planned to accompany him, but a last-minute crisis at Verde Innovations forced her to remain in San Diego. Vincent assured her over the phone that he understood, promising to share details of the conference and expressing what seemed like genuine disappointment. Yet, the promise of opportunity, excitement, and anonymity in Las Vegas proved too tempting for him to resist. Within hours of his arrival, he was seen at exclusive venues with Amber Sullivan, a 25-year-old influencer known for her social media reach and high-profile connections. Their interactions were subtle at first: private conversations in hotel lounges, dinners at fine restaurants, but quickly escalated to more intimate settings. They were photographed together in the high-stakes poker room at Aria, at a private cabana near the Flamingo Pool, and later in a penthouse suite at the Cosmopolitan. The images, initially shared on gossip blogs, spread rapidly across the internet. The photos left little to interpretation. Amber's hand rested on Vincent's thigh while they shared strawberries and champagne on the rooftop terrace, the Vegas Strip glowing behind them. Additional images surfaced showing Vincent entering and leaving her suite at odd hours. Within 48 hours, the story had circulated widely, appearing on social media feeds, entertainment news sites, and even mainstream publications. Catalina's response was measured and deliberate. She did not confront Vincent immediately or react with anger. Instead, she methodically collected the evidence she would need to hold him accountable. Screenshots of the online coverage were saved. Public posts and photographs were documented. She reached out to contacts in San Diego and other cities, quietly confirming details and establishing a timeline of Vincent's activities. Private investigators she had previously engaged were mobilized to verify information and cross-reference his known locations with witness statements, hotel records, and credit card activity. Catalina's approach was meticulous. Every claim, every image, every piece of corroboration was preserved in a secure file, creating a comprehensive record of his actions during the trip. The contrast between Vincent's public image and private behavior was stark. To the outside observer, he had appeared to be a devoted partner, engaged in her world and attentive to shared goals. The Vegas episode revealed the fragility of that image, showing that despite appearances, his old patterns had not disappeared. While the public buzzed with speculation, Catalina maintained control. She contacted her legal team and advisors, preparing for the broader implications. She understood that confronting him directly without preparation could compromise her position. Every step she took was strategic, ensuring that when the time came, she would have a clear, undeniable record of betrayal. Her calm and methodical handling of the situation also served a psychological purpose. By refraining from an immediate confrontation, she prevented Vincent from employing charm, excuses, or manipulation to deflect responsibility. His usual tactics, denial, rationalization, or attempts at persuasion, would be ineffective against the documentation she had compiled. The incident also demonstrated the limitations of wealth and influence when evidence is meticulously preserved. Despite Vincent's access to resources, social connections, and media control, Catalina's proactive approach ensured that the truth was undeniable. The photographs, timestamps, hotel records, and witness confirmations created a narrative that could not be dismissed or rewritten. In the following days, she organized the information into a structured report, categorizing events chronologically and including corroborating materials. Each element, social media posts, news coverage, and investigator notes, was linked to dates and locations, creating a comprehensive overview of his behavior. This level of preparation would later prove critical in both legal and personal contexts, forming the basis of her strategy to hold Vincent accountable for more than just this single incident. The Vegas betrayal was more than a personal affront, it was a catalyst. It revealed the persistence of Vincent's patterns despite a year of apparent change, and demonstrated the importance of evidence over perception. Catalina's response highlighted her ability to transform personal disappointment into a structured approach to accountability, reinforcing that preparation and strategy were more effective than confrontation or emotional reaction. By the time Vincent returned to Malibu, Catalina was ready. She had compiled her evidence, consulted legal experts, and outlined the steps she would take to address the broader scope of his behavior. The sun had begun to set over the Pacific when he arrived, unaware of the extent of her preparation. On the oceanfront deck, she awaited him with documentation, investigators, and legal counsel present. Vincent, expecting either forgiveness or an excuse to rationalize his actions, was confronted with precision. Catalina calmly presented the evidence of his time in Las Vegas, connecting it to broader patterns of dishonesty and betrayal that extended beyond their relationship. Each image, timestamp, and witness account was laid out clearly, leaving him with no room to maneuver. This moment marked a turning point. The carefully constructed illusion of trust, affection, and personal growth was shattered, not through anger, but through documentation, strategy, and control. The Vegas trip, once a private indulgence, became a public record of behavior that could no longer be ignored. Catalina's approach underscored that accountability required preparation, patience, and evidence, tools that wealth and charm alone could not counter. In retrospect, the betrayal in Las Vegas was the event that catalyzed the systematic exposure of Vincent's patterns. It demonstrated that even a billionaire accustomed to influence and discretion could be held accountable when confronted with precise documentation and strategic action. For Catalina, it was a lesson in leverage, foresight, and the importance of turning a personal violation into a broader pursuit of justice. After the Las Vegas revelations, Catalina moved quickly to consolidate the evidence and expand the scope of her investigation. She engaged a team of experienced lawyers and private detectives, carefully selected for their ability to handle complex cases involving high-profile individuals. Each team member was briefed thoroughly, emphasizing precision, discretion, and the importance of building a complete record. Catalina knew that confronting Vincent directly would be ineffective without a foundation of irrefutable facts. The first step was to map the extent of Vincent Kane's personal and professional misconduct. Using records from hotels, credit cards, and public filings, investigators began identifying individuals who had been affected by his actions. Within weeks, a pattern emerged. Women from multiple cities, New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, Houston, and Phoenix, had suffered emotional, financial, or professional harm connected to him. Each account was meticulously documented, with timelines, financial statements, and correspondence confirming the details. Catalina's approach to coalition building was deliberate. She reached out to these women, framing the communication around collaboration and accountability rather than vengeance. Many had remained silent for years, constrained by non-disclosure agreements or fear of retaliation. Catalina's credibility, professionalism, and careful strategy inspired confidence. She demonstrated that together, they could address the harm that had been inflicted and prevent further manipulation. From Phoenix, Maria Gonzalez shared documentation of broken business deals that had undermined her restaurant expansion. Jennifer Chin in Seattle provided evidence of intellectual property misappropriation and professional sabotage. Each woman contributed to a growing network of victims who had experienced patterns of betrayal, both personal and professional. The network quickly extended to Houston, where former partners revealed additional evidence of deception, including falsified contracts and unauthorized corporate transfers. As the coalition took shape, it became clear that Vincent's misconduct was not limited to personal relationships. Business practices mirrored the patterns seen in his private life. Tech had acquired smaller companies under the guise of investment and partnership, only to extract proprietary technology, weaken competitors, or undermine agreements. This approach left numerous entrepreneurs financially vulnerable and professionally sidelined. The overlap between personal betrayals and corporate misconduct highlighted a consistent pattern. Vincent viewed relationships as instruments to be leveraged for personal gain. Catalina coordinated the collection and verification of this evidence. Investigators cross-referenced dates, locations, and financial transactions, establishing connections between personal indiscretions and professional manipulations. Every document, photo, and statement was organized into a secure database, creating a comprehensive, chronological account of Vincent's actions over more than a decade. The meticulous record allowed the network to present a cohesive case, demonstrating that his behavior was systematic rather than incidental. The coalition also considered the broader impact of exposing these patterns. Public awareness would not only hold Vincent accountable, but also protect future victims. Catalina ensured that communications were professional, emphasizing integrity, accuracy, and the pursuit of justice. She balanced the urgency of action with the necessity of thorough documentation, understanding that haste could undermine credibility. Each member of the network brought unique insights and evidence. Maria Gonzalez contributed financial statements and witness testimonies regarding sabotaged business partnerships. Jennifer Chin shared internal emails demonstrating unauthorized access to proprietary software. Women in Los Angeles provided details of personal betrayals intertwined with attempts to influence professional decisions. Each case reinforced the narrative that Vincent's misuse of power extended beyond isolated incidents. The coalition's communication strategy was equally deliberate. Regular calls, secure emails, and in-person meetings allowed members to coordinate efforts without exposing sensitive information publicly. Legal advisors reviewed every interaction to ensure compliance with laws governing privacy and corporate conduct. Catalina's leadership fostered trust and encouraged participants to contribute fully, creating a sense of collective purpose that extended from Phoenix to Seattle and beyond. In parallel, the investigation revealed additional business irregularities. Tech had leveraged NDAs and contractual clauses to silence whistleblowers, manipulate competitors, and obscure financial misconduct. This mirrored the personal manipulation observed in Vincent's relationships, underscoring a broader pattern of ethical breaches. Each new revelation strengthened the coalition's case and clarified the scope of potential legal action. By the time the initial documentation phase concluded, Catalina had established a nationwide network of affected parties united around accountability. The coalition now had a detailed record of Vincent Kane's personal betrayals, financial manipulations, and corporate misconduct, with verified evidence from multiple states and industries. This foundation would later serve as the backbone for legal filings, media engagement, and public awareness campaigns, ensuring that Vincent's history of deception could not be ignored or dismissed. The significance of this phase was profound. Catalina had transformed what could have been a personal grievance into a structured, strategic effort with nationwide reach. She demonstrated that careful preparation, coalition building, and methodical documentation could challenge even the most powerful individuals. The Network Awakens had achieved clarity, focus, and momentum, ready to bring both personal and professional accountability to a man who had long assumed he was untouchable. With evidence meticulously compiled, Catalina and her legal team moved decisively. A lawsuit was filed at the San Francisco Superior Court, naming Vincent Kane, Tech, and several associated entities. The filing detailed a decade-long pattern of personal and professional misconduct, including fraudulent business practices, breach of contracts, and exploitation of women through both relationships and corporate influence. Each claim was supported by evidence collected from multiple cities, including financial documents, communications, photographs, and witness statements. The media responded immediately. National outlets reported the filing with headlines emphasizing the fall of a billionaire whose public persona of charm and sophistication masked a history of abuse and deception. Kaintek's stock, which had opened strong that morning, fell sharply in pre-market trading as investors reacted to the allegations. Analysts predicted a prolonged impact, noting that the suit combined personal misconduct with potential financial liabilities that could reach into the hundreds of millions. Social media amplified the story, spreading images of Vincent in court alongside summaries of the allegations, creating an environment in which public opinion turned quickly and decisively. Vincent's reaction followed a pattern familiar to those who had observed his career. He assembled a team of high-powered lawyers, public relations specialists, and private investigators. Initial efforts focused on challenging the credibility of the coalition members, questioning motives, and highlighting minor inconsistencies in documentation. Press releases emphasized his charitable contributions, business accomplishments, and prior partnerships to deflect attention from the allegations. Private investigators attempted to obtain information that could undermine key witnesses, including financial records and personal histories, aiming to cast doubt on Catalina and the women aligned with her. Despite these efforts, the coalition remained organized and resolute. Catalina ensured that each interaction was documented, legal counsel reviewed every step, and communications were coordinated to prevent misrepresentation. The preparation and thorough documentation limited Vincent's ability to manipulate narratives effectively. A turning point emerged when Margaret Patterson, CEO of a Fortune 500 company in Chicago, publicly announced that her corporation would sever all business ties with Kaitek. Speaking outside her company's headquarters, Patterson explained that ethical standards and integrity could not be compromised, even for the sake of profit. Her decision sent a ripple through corporate America. Other companies began quietly reviewing their contracts with Kaitek, assessing risk exposure and reputational concerns. Within weeks, a network of businesses, from Portland's technology sector to Atlanta's corporate headquarters, joined the boycott. The combination of media scrutiny, falling stock prices, and corporate distancing created an environment of intense pressure on Vincent. His usual ability to control perception weakened. Investors and partners demanded transparency. Legal teams had to operate under heightened scrutiny, and employees became uncertain about the company's future. Kaitek's expansion plans, previously a source of confidence and pride, were delayed as resources shifted to legal defenses and public relations damage control. The lawsuit also drew attention to Vincent's personal conduct, amplifying the consequences of his actions. Each claim of betrayal, whether financial, professional, or relational, was framed in court filings with supporting evidence, emphasizing a consistent pattern rather than isolated incidents. The documentation of multiple relationships, business disputes, and contractual violations underscored the systemic nature of the behavior, leaving little room for mitigation through charm or reputation alone. Catalina's leadership throughout this stage was critical. She coordinated the coalition's public statements, legal filings, and internal communications, ensuring that the narrative remained focused on accountability rather than personal vindication. This clarity of purpose reinforced credibility and drew public attention to the broader implications of Vincent's actions, including corporate responsibility, the ethical treatment of business partners, and the consequences of exploiting personal relationships for gain. By combining evidence, strategic communications, and the support of influential business leaders, Catalina effectively neutralized many of Vincent's standard defenses. Efforts to intimidate, deflect, or discredit her and the coalition were met with a coordinated, fact-based response. Each attempt to manipulate perception became an additional example of the behavior outlined in court filings, reinforcing the consistency and thoroughness of the evidence against him. As the lawsuit progressed, the pressure on Vincent intensified. Media coverage remained relentless, stock prices fluctuated sharply, and the boycott continued to grow. For the first time, his wealth and influence could not shield him from consequences. The legal war, fueled by a combination of meticulous preparation, coalition building, and strategic public engagement, exposed the limitations of power when faced with documented truth. The stage was now set for the next phase, the collapse of Vincent Kane's empire. The combination of legal action, public scrutiny, and corporate withdrawal created conditions that would test the resilience of his business and personal networks. Catalina's calculated efforts had created momentum, demonstrating that accountability could extend from private relationships to professional conduct. The implications extended far beyond one individual, illustrating how organized, evidence-based action can challenge even the most entrenched systems of power. The consequences of Vincent Kane's actions expanded beyond courtroom filings. Federal agencies began inquiries that would challenge the foundations of his empire. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened a formal investigation into Kane's financial practices, focusing on allegations of fraudulent reporting, misappropriation of assets, and irregularities in acquisitions. Simultaneously, the Federal Bureau of Investigation initiated an inquiry into potential corporate espionage, racketeering, and misuse of proprietary technology. Both agencies coordinated efforts to analyze years of records spanning multiple states and business sectors. News of the investigations intensified media coverage. Headlines tracked each development, highlighting the contrast between Vincent's public image and the mounting evidence of misconduct. Investors reacted quickly, and Kane's stock continued to fluctuate dramatically. Confidence among partners and clients diminished, contracts were renegotiated or canceled, and planned expansions were postponed indefinitely. The legal pressure did not stop at federal oversight. Individual lawsuits filed by former partners, employees, and romantic associates accumulated from Los Angeles to New York, Boston to Austin. Each claim reinforced the emerging narrative. Vincent Kane had exploited his wealth and position to manipulate, deceive, and betray those around him. The cases encompassed financial damages, intellectual property theft, and personal misconduct, creating an environment where every new filing compounded the challenges of defending his reputation. As his business network eroded, Vincent's social life began to collapse. Former friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the growing public scrutiny. Invitations to high-profile events ceased, and even elite social circles that had once welcomed him now regarded him with caution. Former colleagues and acquaintances avoided his calls, leaving him increasingly isolated in his Beverly Hills mansion and Manhattan penthouse. Mental strain became evident. Photographs and video footage captured him outside his attorney's offices, appearing disheveled and exhausted, a stark contrast to the polished, confident figure familiar to the public. Attempts at controlling the narrative through social media posts or charitable announcements were largely ineffective. The audience he had once commanded with charm and charisma was no longer receptive. Statements meant to demonstrate remorse or transformation were met with skepticism, and the accumulation of documented evidence overwhelmed any attempt at reputation management. Vincent tried to regain control through media appearances and selective philanthropic gestures. He made carefully scripted speeches about corporate responsibility, pledged donations to environmental and educational causes, and appeared at industry conferences attempting to frame himself as a changed individual. Yet each move was scrutinized against the documented history compiled by Catalina and the coalition. Journalists and analysts highlighted discrepancies between his statements and verified records, reinforcing public perception of ongoing duplicity. Social isolation deepened as his personal relationships fractured further. Family members, including his parents, expressed disappointment publicly or withdrew entirely from contact. Former romantic partners, previously restrained by NDAs, began to speak out once legal protections were adjusted, further reducing his personal support network. The combined effect of legal scrutiny, business pressure, and social estrangement contributed to a noticeable decline in Vincent's mental and emotional stability. Simultaneously, Kane's internal operations suffered. Employees were uncertain about leadership direction, executive turnover increased and morale dropped. Departments operated with heightened caution, aware that any misstep could be scrutinized by investigators or leveraged in ongoing lawsuits. The cumulative effect was a slowdown in productivity, delays in product launches, and growing concern among investors about the company's viability. The contrast between Vincent's previous success and his current circumstances became increasingly evident. A figure who had once navigated Silicon Valley and elite social circles with confidence was now reacting defensively, attempting to respond to crises rather than lead initiatives. The empire he had built on innovation, charisma, and financial acumen was under pressure from multiple directions: regulatory, legal, social, and internal organizational challenges. By the end of this phase, it was clear that Vincent's attempts at rehabilitation, whether through public statements, philanthropy, or curated appearances, were insufficient. The combined forces of legal accountability, federal oversight, and social withdrawal ensured that his public persona no longer aligned with reality. Every measure intended to restore credibility was mitigated by a record of documented misconduct, leaving him increasingly marginalized and facing the collapse of both his professional empire and personal networks. The federal trial took place in San Francisco, just blocks from where Vincent Cain had once presided over his empire. Courtroom seats were filled with reporters, legal observers, and members of the public eager to witness the outcome. Catalina Rodriguez took the stand, calm and composed, wearing a navy suit that reflected her professional demeanor. She presented a chronological account of Vincent's decade-long pattern of personal and professional misconduct, detailing evidence gathered by the coalition and verified by legal teams. Her testimony was clear, precise, and compelling. She described the strategies Vincent used to manipulate relationships and exploit business partners, supported by financial records, communications, and corroborating statements from multiple cities. Each piece of evidence reinforced the central argument. Vincent Cain had consistently abused power for personal gain, disregarding the consequences for others. The courtroom listened closely as Catalina highlighted the coordination between victims and the careful documentation that ensured every claim could withstand legal scrutiny. The trial revealed the extent of Vincent's financial misconduct. Evidence showed misappropriated assets, breached contracts, and fraudulent activities that extended across the country. These actions, combined with documented personal betrayals, demonstrated a consistent pattern of exploitation. Expert witnesses provided analyses of Cain Tech's internal operations, corporate decisions, and financial irregularities, confirming that Vincent's methods were neither isolated nor incidental. When the jury returned their verdict, Vincent was found liable on multiple counts. Financial penalties were substantial, stripping him of the majority of his wealth. Beyond monetary consequences, the court ordered the dissolution of non-disclosure agreements that had previously silenced his victims, freeing them to share their experiences without restriction. This outcome not only held Vincent accountable, but empowered those who had suffered in silence for years. The reaction outside the courtroom reflected the significance of the verdict. Former victims spoke publicly, describing a sense of closure and the relief of seeing the law enforce accountability. Media coverage emphasized the broader implications, noting how one individual's repeated abuses had been addressed through coordinated legal and public action. The case became a reference point for discussions about corporate responsibility, ethical conduct, and the accountability of individuals in positions of power. Several lessons emerged from the case. First, accountability is universal. Wealth and influence cannot protect someone from facing consequences when misconduct is documented and pursued methodically. Second, unity creates power. Catalina's coalition demonstrated that collective action strengthens individual voices and can produce tangible results against entrenched authority. Third, character matters more than wealth. Patterns of deception and exploitation in personal life mirrored professional misconduct, showing that integrity is a foundational element of sustainable success. Additionally, The case highlighted the importance of perseverance and preparation. Justice required careful planning, patient documentation, and strategic collaboration. Catalina's ability to organize, support, and guide the coalition ensured that evidence was credible, comprehensive, and presented effectively. Her leadership emphasized that achieving justice is often a process that demands diligence and unwavering focus. The trial also underscored the value of truth in the digital age. Social media, public records, and communication technology provided mechanisms for evidence to be collected, shared, and verified. Attempts to manipulate public perception or suppress information proved ineffective against systematic documentation and coordinated legal action. Transparency became a tool for accountability, reinforcing the principle that deliberate documentation and ethical reporting can counter deception at any scale. In the aftermath, Vincent Kane faced the realities of personal and professional ruin. Former allies and associates distanced themselves, and ongoing scrutiny prevented attempts at rebuilding his public image. The collapse of his empire, once viewed as untouchable, served as a stark reminder that ethical breaches in both personal and professional contexts have consequences that extend far beyond immediate interactions. Catalina Rodriguez emerged as a symbol of principled leadership, resilience, and strategic action. Her approach combined intelligence, professionalism, and integrity, demonstrating how coordinated efforts can address systemic abuse and hold powerful individuals accountable. Her success reinforced the importance of community, organization, and sustained advocacy in achieving justice. For viewers following this story, the lessons are clear. Accountability cannot be bypassed. Collective action strengthens outcomes. Integrity is essential for lasting success, and truth remains a decisive factor in ensuring fairness. Catalina's work exemplifies the power of methodical, principled action to produce meaningful results. If you're watching this story, share where you're tuning in from. Subscribe to ensure you don't miss tomorrow's story, which will deliver another powerful, real-world narrative. Your support helps bring these stories of accountability, resilience, and justice to a wider audience, reinforcing the idea that individuals can make a significant impact when they choose to act with courage and conviction.